Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be on this planet. Welcome to another edition of Football Picks here on TalkingSports.tv. With me as usual, and first of all, freshly back from Las Vegas where you made a killing, I understand, Uncle Ben Walderman himself. Uncle Ben's from Uncle Ben's FootballPicks.com. How'd you make out there?
Well, Marty, first of all, thanks for having me on the show again. It's nice to be back in town with you people. Last week we made a little bit of money, Marty. It wasn't something you'd go crazy over, but like I always say, no one went broke making less profit, and we did leave Las Vegas with a little extra cash in our pockets and a good time had by all.
Good. And you're back here at Charlie Fitz Whiskey's, one of the best bars in North America. You can find it in Vaughan, Ontario, and one of the owners of Charlie Fitz Whiskey's is right here with us as usual. Handsome Howard Kamen himself. Handsome, you went to Vegas a couple of weeks ago. I know you cleaned up, but you're probably going back soon, I gather.
Well, I'll let them keep their money there for a little bit. I don't want to take too much from it. I don't want them to have to close the hotels down.
Handsome Howard, of course, an astute handicapper himself, and his record speaks for itself. Both of these men are doing pretty well this year. Howard's doing extremely well with his NFL picks. Uncle Ben is doing well with his NFL picks, extremely well with his NCAA football picks, which we will get to at the end of the program as usual, because a lot of people are betting on NCAA football. That's where they can make some money.
Well, that is the most profitable sport going, in my opinion, consistently over the years, at least at UncleBen'sFootball.com. But Howard, Marty, I have to disagree with you. I'm taking it on the chin right now in the NFL.
Okay.
I'm not doing well at all. Never mind what Marty says. I'm not doing well in the NFL. Right now I'm running at 12-16, which is horrible. But interestingly enough is that last year I was at 11-15, and we ended up with a 61.5% winning percentage last year.
That's
so
good.
The time to make money is now. Now that we've got a little bit of knowledge about these teams, hopefully enough to pick some winners. Like Marty said, I'm doing very well in the college, over 62%, but we need to pull up our socks on Sunday afternoons is what I really need to do.
All right, we'll get to those NFL picks of yours and of Howard's a little later on, but let's just go back to last week a little bit, guys. There were some incredible games. There was one in particular that I don't think anybody will forget. The New England Patriots at home against Drew Brees and the New Orleans Saints. Howard, let's start with you about this game. I mean, there were fewer than 2 minutes left, and it showed me when the Saints had this lead that they just couldn't put the game away. Not only could they not make a first down, but they hardly used any clock, giving Tom Brady and the Patriots and Bill Belichick a chance at home to come back in dramatic fashion, something they have done before. But this is a team that went into New England undefeated with Drew Brees. And what it showed me is that there's a weakness defensively too, because Brady almost scored at will at the end. Talk to me about that game and what kind of effect. I know you had New England.
Well, a few comments. I mean, first of all, yeah, New England was one of my picks last week, so I was ecstatic. I mean, I woke the whole house up when they scored with 5 seconds left. I was screaming my vocal because that was a game where there was 2 or 3 occasions where you figured New England was dead, and for whatever reason, full kudos to Tom Brady and the New England team, because that shows the character of a winner, a team that can not throw in the towel. All New Orleans had to do was get a first down. The game would have been over. Their defense dug in. Brady got the ball back with no timeouts left. And, honestly, his wide receiver corp is not what it used to be.
No, it certainly isn't.
And they pulled it off. And kudos to Belichick, kudos to Brady. A couple of things I did notice about that game, though. First of all, New England had a chance to put them away in the third quarter. It was about 3rd and 7, and Brady had a guy wide open. I forget who it was, and just barely overthrew him. At that point, it would have probably been about a 17-point lead for New England. It wouldn't even have to come down to that. And the second thing was New Orleans, when they did score their winning touchdown, I think they were 3rd and 20 or 4th and 20. They threw a ball into the end zone. There were 2 New England coverage guys there. And I think the guy's name was Stills, the New Orleans wide receiver. Made a hell of a catch. And at that point, New Orleans looked like they were going to win the game. So It was one of those games where, you know, at the beginning you thought if you bet New England you were a cinch, and then New Orleans came back, and then people were ripping up their tickets with New England. Although before the show, me and Ben were talking, and he had mentioned that all the action in Caesar's Palace was going on New Orleans Saints. So maybe you want to talk about that, what the crowd was like when New England did score that touchdown with 3 or 4 seconds left.
The crowd in Vegas,
Yeah.
And you
Yes,
had, and let's remind everybody that you also picked New England.
We did have New England last week. I had a -2.5. I'm not sure what the final line went off at, but most of the action did come in on the New Orleans Saints, and particularly in the second half, because I think the New England had a big lead, maybe a 10-point lead at halftime or something like that,
something like
and
that,
people pounded New Orleans in the second half, and they did actually win that action. But they had more than one opportunity, like Howard said. They got the ball back with about 3.5 minutes left, and they went bomb on the first play and it was intercepted.
Yeah.
And New Orleans had a chance to run the clock at that time, and then they had 3 and out, and I think they had some mismanagement. Somebody ran out of bounds, some mismanagement on the clock.
Yes.
They ended up punting.
With hardly any
Then
time
they got the
gone.
ball back. Then they stopped New England on downs. They had the ball. All they had to do was make another first down. Of course, they kicked a field goal, and we all know what happened. It was a very exciting game.
With 5 seconds left.
It was pretty much a Tom Brady display. He's one player that if you took that Tom Brady away from the New England Patriots, this team is a sad sack. It's like a Jacksonville Jaguar operation. I don't see them being deep.
But Ben, in all fairness, you could say that about so many teams in the NFL when you take their quarterback. You take Drew Brees away from New Orleans.
Yes,
Are they
okay.
that good?
Not all quarterbacks. I don't think there's about
Peyton
5
Manning.
or 6 quarterbacks in the league that come into that category. The rest of them, then there's a bunch of quarterbacks that are all pretty much the same, and then there's a bunch of quarterbacks that aren't very good at all.
Yeah, you can't rely on them.
I think though what he's saying about Tom Brady, for whatever reason, that guy knows how to win with that team. Like, he's not blessed with a great wide receiver core this year. He doesn't really have a great running back. I mean, Ridley's okay, but he's nothing special.
No, he's not.
But Brady, just over the years, he's got that magical touch with New England, and if he wasn't there, I agree. You can even put a better quarterback, talented, although there aren't a lot more talented, but just his overall...
His will to win.
His will to win, exactly,
Correct.
is just so strong for that team. And you even saw it on the sidelines when he was sitting there, and he was just saying, get me that ball back. I want one more shot at this thing, and I'm going to pull it off. You could just feel that in
also,
in
the
his,
thing about Tom Brady is that he wins games that people like Peyton Manning just doesn't win. I mean, Peyton Manning's a great quarterback, Hall of Famer, fantastic. There's no question about his abilities.
You're talking about
But
Super Bowls.
But he doesn't win that big game. I
Yeah.
mean, he did win the big game one time, but how many opportunities has he had to win the big game? And
A bunch.
And he just hasn't gotten
All
it
right,
done.
well, we'll
Okay?
talk about Peyton Manning for sure in the big game of the week coming up this week. But, folks, before we leave last week entirely, there was a scene in Houston last week in which Matt Schaub, who also was a reliable quarterback at one point, certainly not this year. He's having a nightmarish season. And there was a situation where, by the way, he set the record for most interceptions for touchdowns in consecutive weeks. So now they're calling those pick sixes the Schaub. The poor guy, who wasn't that bad a quarterback as recently as last season, having a horrible year and having a nightmarish season. The Texans are falling apart. Last week, Schaub gets hurt, and he gets hurt badly in this 38-13 loss at home. And the fans start cheering in Houston. And they cheer, and they actually stood in some cases and gave him a standing ovation for having an injury. Schaub was devastated by this, of course. He complained to the media afterwards that there is no business for fans doing this sort of thing. And some of his teammates also took exception.
And some of the St. Louis ball players as well.
Yes. My question, and it was the Rams who beat them, by the way. Let's start with you on this one, Ben. My question is, fans pay their money. It's not nice, but when they stand up and express their ire because their quarterback is injured, do they not have that right?
Well, fans pay their money. I agree with you, Marty. But I don't think they should be booing people that are incurring injuries at the professional
Well, you
sports
wouldn't
level.
do it because you're a classy guy.
Well,
but do we have the right to tell them?
I would boo on performance, okay?
Yeah.
When a guy, I understand the
Yeah.
guy's performance level is way down, be it as it may, but you don't go booing. Not only were they booing, this is the home. I mean, this is your hometown
yeah.
hometown fans.
Yeah.
I understand, like, if you want to get on a team's back for performance, I get it. But when people get injured at the professional level, when they're trying to do their best, it's just totally uncalled for.
All right. Actually, they weren't booing. I should say they were cheering is what they were
Well,
doing
okay,
at
that's
the
what I
injury.
mean.
That's
Yes,
what I meant
yes.
to say. Howard, I mean, I heard a lot of talk from, as Ben mentioned, even from some of the Rams, but members of the Texans and from Schaub himself saying fans have no right to do that. These guys have families, they have wives, they have kids. I've been in the media an awfully long time. I write an article that people don't like. They rip me apart. They go on other radio stations or what have you, and they say boo, and they say this guy's full of crap. They don't know what, he doesn't know what he's talking about. They boo me, and I have a family. My mother hears it. My kids hear it. My wife hears it, et cetera, et cetera. All I'm saying is that it seems to be part of the business. This guy gets hurt, and they make it seem like the fans sinned. Now, I'm just being devil's advocate, because I don't like it. I don't like cheering when somebody's hurt. I think that's bad karma for you if you do that. But I understand their frustrations. Can you take a side on this?
Well, listen, you gotta take the. I mean, if someone, even people that stood up there and cheered, probably afterwards they probably felt stupid about it, because why would you ever cheer an injury? I don't care if it's the competitor, if it's your team. I mean, someone gets injured, they could be seriously hurt. I've seen guys. I think it was once Michael Irvin got hit in the middle of the field, went down. They carried him off for the stretcher, and the Eagles fans were actually cheering him as he got pulled off on the stretcher. I mean, that's disgusting, right? I mean, these guys, yeah, they get paid a lot of money. They're supposed to perform, but an injury is something that, I mean, you don't show any. You cheer somebody who gets an injury and walks off and shows the courage to come off the field, but you don't cheer a guy when he's down on the ground grimacing from an injury. I don't like that. I think there's no place in that. And I'm sure even the fans that were doing that probably after the game probably felt stupid about it, because it is a stupid thing.
They probably didn't know how serious it was also.
Yeah, you don't cheer an injury.
All right, Handsome Howard Kamens, we're here at Charlie Fitzwhiskey's, and of course the star of the show, Uncle Ben himself of Uncle Ben's FootballPicks.com. UncleBen'sFootball.com.
Correct, sir.
UncleBen'sFootball.com. Ben, you've been saying all along this season that the Texans have been serious underachievers. Schaub's out for the season now. That may be a good thing. I don't know. I'm not a big TJ Yates booster. What about the Texans?
Well, first of all, I had the Houston Texans last week on my site, Marty, as a free pick. And I really actually liked the Texans last week after going up against a really tough schedule the previous 3 weeks. They came out completely flat last week. I can't understand why Gary Kubiak isn't sitting in this bar right here drinking beer instead of coaching the Houston Texans. What is going on with this team? This is one of the top teams, or supposedly in the preseason predictions, was going to be a Super Bowl contender with Denver in the AFC. This team is nowhere to be found. In fact, they could easily be 0-6, the Houston Texans. It's not for a comeback win miraculously on the opening Monday night week of the season. And I believe they had an overtime win against the Tennessee Titans, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's correct.
This team is not performing anywhere near the levels they should have. And this week they have to go in and play the 6-0 Kansas City Chiefs.
I don't think that there's any question that Kubiak will be the ex-head coach of the Texans after the season, and maybe before the end of the season. Don't you agree?
Well, I mean, you can't blame it all on Kubiak. I mean,
But you know how it goes.
He obviously, his quarterback hasn't performed. And Houston is a fun, an interesting team, because their defensive stats this year
are very good.
Most of the touchdowns have been pick sixes and special teams touchdowns. So
Correct.
their defense has done its job, and they have a good defense with Watt anchoring the defense. So
True.
They're not a team I would completely write off yet. If they can somehow get a quarterback in there that can just somehow do the job.
That's what I was going to
big
say.
if.
Yeah.
There's a kid called Case Keenum. I don't know if you guys know who Case
Houston,
Keenum
the
is.
University of Houston
Went
set
to the
record.
Houston, correct, broke all the NCAA records. Kevin Sumlin was the coach at Houston at that time. He's now coaching at Texas A&M.
Mm-hmm.
And Case Keenum, I mean, he's a mobile quarterback. He's more of a Kaepernick, Russell Wilson type of quarterback, maybe, which is what they need, the Houston Texans at this time, instead of a statue back there, because Matt Schaub is not really, a mobile quarterback as far as, today's day and age of quarterbacks
That's
going
right.
NFL. And I'm not saying TJ Yates, TJ Yates might be starting this week, but I think you're going to see Case Keenum in there before the end of the season. tossing some balls, changing the offense for this team, and he could be the quarterback of the future for the Houston Texans.
Well, we'll see. That's interesting because I watched him at the University of Houston. He's a gunslinger. He did put up a lot of points on the board.
All kinds of records,
that
Marty.
run and shoot offense.
All kinds of records there.
Well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Handsome Howard came in. Uncle Ben Walderman. We're going to continue this program in a moment when we take a look at the big game of the coming weekend, Denver at Indianapolis. Don't go away.